Never in my life did I think I'd spend the night with my mother-in-law. And then she got pregnant with my child. Let me start from the beginning. Me, Mike Carter, and Sophie Bennett tied the knot right after college, capping off a 3-year love story. We both graduated the same year, but I've got 4 years on Sophie since I took a couple of years before school to serve in the Unity mission. Our families were all smiles about us picking each other, though my mother-in-law, Laura, might have been the most excited of the bunch. Laura got a real kick out of living through our engagement and wedding hoopla, stuff she never got to do herself. See, she'd gotten pregnant as a teen, and her super religious folks pretty much cut her off, leaving her to scrape by as a single mom. Then, when she was 21, she hitched herself to an older guy named James Bennett, mostly to keep Sophie fed and clothed. Romance? A big, fancy engagement? Nope, Laura never had that. James had already been down the aisle once and just wanted a quick, no-fuss ceremony. James was solid, though, treated Laura and Sophie decently, but man, he was about as exciting as a wet sock and had zero flair for sweet talk. I always had a soft spot for Laura, though. She's just 13 years older than me, so I never really saw her as the usual mother-in-law type, more like a cool, younger aunt. She's got Sophie's good looks, though she's 3 inches shorter, with green eyes instead of blue, and maybe not quite as flirty. Laura's got this glowing smile that lights up her gorgeous face, and she's one of the kindest souls I know. Even with all that beauty, she's real shy and always covers up in modest clothes, probably 'cause of how life kicked her around early on. A few years into me and Sophie being married, James keeled over from a heart attack, not a total shocker given how he lived, but it hit Laura like a ton of bricks. I stepped up for her, sorted out James's estate, let her cry on my shoulder, and pulled her into our world as much as I could. I figured keeping her busy with our stuff and her charity gigs might help. Only thing she wouldn't budge on. Dating, no way she'd let me play matchmaker, even though I knew plenty of guys, some way younger, who'd have jumped at the chance. Then, right after me and Sophie hit 8 years of marriage, I found myself blindsided, like some clueless husband in a bad movie, by her cheating. I might have been slow to catch on, but I don't mess around once I know the score. After I was sure Sophie stepped out, I packed up, moved into an extended stay motel, and got our money situation squared away fast. Deep down, I think Sophie really loved me, but she got lost somewhere and acted like her little fling with some guy she swore meant nothing was no big deal. She even said I was blowing it out of proportion. I knew she'd spilled it all to Laura, who I just call Laura, never Mom, and that Laura was supposed to back her up. 5 days after I bailed, Laura showed up at the motel, caught me off guard, but I liked her too much to turn her away, so I let her in. We plopped down on the sofa, and she grabbed my hand. "Mike, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice soft. "I didn't raise Sophie to do this." I gave her hand a squeeze and said, "I know, Laura. You've always struck me as a good, honest woman. What you went through doesn't have a darn thing to do with Sophie's choices. You holding up okay?" A tear welled up in her eye as she nodded. "It's rough, but I'm managing." "You?" "I'm alright," I told her. It knocked me sideways, but I don't sit on decisions. I moved out. "It'll sting for a while, but I'll pull through." She asked, "Any chance you'd forgive Sophie and take her back?" "I'm lost here. She thinks you're overreacting and doesn't get how bad she messed up." A tear crept into my eye too. We ended up talking for an hour, not just about Sophie, but all sorts of stuff. When she got up to go, her hug lingered longer than you'd expect from your mother-in-law. As she stepped back, she locked eyes with me and said, real serious, "I hope you divorcing Sophie doesn't mean you're cutting me out too." "Laura," I told her, "you'll always have a spot in my heart." After she left, I felt lighter. She'd stuck up for Sophie but didn't push me, just listened like a real pal, not some typical in-law. That good feeling lasted till I woke up that night, drenched in sweat from a dream I had no business having. A week after moving out, I filed for divorce, irreconcilable differences, and told the landlord the rent wasn't my problem anymore. Sophie was ticked off, big time. I couldn't wrap my head around why she was so bent out of shape. What did she think would happen? She'd known me 8 years, I'm not some mystery. Her and her lawyer threw everything at me, even counseling, making those first 3 months a slog. I was reeling but stood my ground, probably would have cracked without my 2 bachelor buddies propping me up. Laura helped too, she'd call weekly, checking in and tossing out uplifting tales from her charity work. We'd grab lunch once a month, and she'd always be all sunshine and smiles. 3 months into those lunches, we had a prelim hearing with the magistrate. Tuesday, 2 p.m. Sophie pushed for counseling, but my lawyer shut it down with pics of her cozying up to Ryan, her fling guy, at least twice since I filed. She bawled, swearing nothing physical happened with him since I left, but the judge wasn't buying it. She hadn't kept her distance, so no forced counseling. Everyone in that room knew it was the start of the end. Divorce looked locked in for 3 months out. Next day, Laura rang me at work, rare, but I was always glad to hear her voice. After some chit-chat, she cut to it. "Mike, you probably heard Sophie called me yesterday, all torn up. Looks like the divorce is really happening soon, huh?" "Yeah, Laura," I said. "It's true. Hurts like hell, but I've gotta keep moving. My lawyers sure will hash out the money stuff, so it should wrap up in about 2 months. I figured you might be low," she said, "so how about dinner Friday? Think it'd be weird going out with your almost ex-mother-in-law? I could wear a fake mustache if it helps," she joked. I cracked a laugh. "Nah, sounds good, no disguise needed. Just hope I'm not a drag." "Don't sweat it," she said. "I'll make sure you have a good time and eat something decent. Cooking's not your thing, right?" I chuckled. She wasn't wrong, and it felt like a compliment. "I can meet you there, or you can swing by, your call." "Nah, this one's on me, no buts about it, I'm picking you up," Laura insisted. "How's 8 p.m. sound?" I gave in with a quick, "Alright, you win." That Tuesday night, though, I got jolted awake by another freaky dream, starting to think I might need a shrink if these keep messing with my head. Friday rolled around, and at 8:07 p.m., Laura showed up at my apartment door, looking like she'd stepped out of a magazine, not her usual low-key self at all. She rocked a sleek, low-cut blouse, a short skirt hugging her hips, 3-inch heels, and just enough makeup to make those killer green eyes pop, plus a new haircut that dialed her natural prettiness up to 11. She could have passed for 30, not 43, easy. She fidgeted a little, eyeing me nervously. "Holy crap, Laura, you look incredible," I managed to blurt out, shaking off the shock. "Thanks," she said, letting out a breath like she'd been holding it. "The place we're going's pretty swanky, I didn't want to stick out like a sore thumb. New outfit, by the way, picked it up this week with a few other things. Figured it was time to shake up the closet." Turned out she'd picked a spot with a dance floor, and while she drove, that skirt slid up her thigh, showing more leg than I'd ever seen, slim and toned, I couldn't help but notice. Dinner was a blast. Laura's bubbly vibe rubbed off on me, almost making me forget the divorce crap still hanging over my head. But her drinking? That threw me. Usually, she's a 1-glass-of-wine gal, but tonight she ordered a whole bottle for us. I barely sip booze, so after my single glass, she took care of the rest herself. Then she dragged me out to dance. Only other times we'd done that were at Sophie's wedding stuff and a couple times after James passed, when she'd brushed off every guy who asked. Back then, she kept it basic and shy, but tonight? She was electric. We tore it up for a few songs, then took a breather. She ducked to the ladies' room, and I plopped down at a table. When she strolled back, I grinned. "Where'd you learn to move like that? I'm not half bad, but you smoked me out there." She flashed a smile. "Been hitting dance lessons once a week for almost a year now." Did I hold my own? Hold your own. You were top tier, had every guy in the place staring, I teased. "Oh, I didn't even clock that," she said, cheeks going pink. Right then, some dude walked up, asking if he could cut in for a dance with her. For a split second, I froze. Her looking like that, folks probably thought she was my date. I snapped out of it and said, "Up to my mother-in-law here." He turned red, and Laura swatted my hand with a playful smirk. He's kidding. But since this is just our second date, I'd hate to let him down, especially if some hot young thing snags him. Thanks for asking, though, maybe if he ditches me, I'll catch you here again. She laughed, resting her hand on mine as the guy grinned, kissed her hand, and bailed. "You're smooth as hell," I told her, chuckling. Just then, the waiter dropped off a midnight widow for her and a soda for me. I opened my mouth to say we didn't order, but she jumped in, "I got it on my way back. Come on, sip up, then let's dance some more." I'd never seen her touch hard stuff, but she slammed that midnight widow like a champ. I finished my soda, and we hit the floor again, 5 or 6 more rounds before she leaned in close, her breath warm. "Think I'm tapped out, too much booze and twirling. Can you get me home? I'm in no shape to drive, might be drunk. Never been there before, but I'd probably crash into a mailbox or something." I grabbed the car from the valet while she made one more bathroom run, then drove her back to her place, a cute, trendy little house in a hip suburb about 6 miles from my spot. Figured I'd just cab it home after. She yammered the whole ride, kept saying she hoped I had fun, hoped I'd put Sophie's cheating out of my mind for a bit. At her place, she fumbled with the garage keys till I took over, got the door up, and helped her inside. She slammed it shut, locked it tight, then fished something out of her purse and handed it to me with a giggle. "Took these off in the bathroom, souvenir for you." Her panties. I'm pretty sure my face went tomato red, but that was just the warm-up. Next thing I know, she drops her skirt, bam, right there, and when I stammered, "What are you doing?" she ripped her blouse open, buttons flying, showing off her bra. I was probably glowing like a stoplight by now. I'd always figured she hid a killer body under those frumpy clothes, but seeing it way beyond what I'd pictured, curves that'd make any gal jealous. She closed in, peppering my shoulders, neck, and cheeks with quick kisses, mumbling stuff I couldn't quite catch. "Been pent up for years, decades, and I need you to fix that," she whispered, her hands finding my pants. That's when I lost it. Scooping her up, I carried her to the bedroom, thinking, yeah, I'm gonna hate myself tomorrow. I was wired, body and soul, and her begging, "Stay with me tonight, Mike, I've never woken up next to someone I love," sealed it. Love? I shoved that word to the back burner as she nestled her head on my shoulder, and I crashed hard, diving into a string of steamy dreams. Normally, dreams slip away when I wake up, but these stuck, every one about me and Laura getting it on. The last one? Not a dream. Morning hit, and I felt something stirring down south, realized it was her, for real. "Best night and morning ever, thank you," she said, those green eyes drilling into mine like a laser beam. We chatted, nice and easy, though I hadn't fully chewed over what we'd done yet, I knew that'd hit me like a freight train later. She grinned, "How about a shower together," and pecked me quick. Tempting, I shot back, but as I started to climb out of bed, she grabbed me, eyes wet. "Sorry I said I love you, first time and all. Think it's my first shower with a guy too, I'm kinda stoked." Laura was whipping up breakfast in nothing but a short robe, humming a tune with this big, goofy grin plastered on her face. We sat down to eat, and man, she looked so darn cute and full of life. It was hands down the happiest I'd felt since my wedding day with Sophie, maybe ever. Once we finished, I told her to go throw some clothes on while I tackled the dishes. She slipped into denim shorts, a sharp blouse, and comfy flats, and I couldn't get over how young she looked or how those hips of hers caught my eye. She drove me back to my place, and when we pulled up, she tossed out, "Hey, think I could check out your apartment? Never seen it before." "Sure thing," I said, nodding. She seemed a little jittery, though it was tough to pin down why. My place ain't huge, so it didn't take long to hit the bedroom. She let out this heavy sigh, planted her hands on my chest, and murmured, "Mike, could you make love to me right here in your bed? Her fingers slid lower, and that mix of her soft plea, her gentle vibe, and the mind-blowing night we just had lit a fire in me I couldn't put out. I took off my clothes without tearing anything. My shirt buttons and boxers weren't so lucky, and when I returned to the bed with her in my arms, she was smiling broadly, saying accepting things and looking at me. We flopped down side by side, grinning like idiots. "Did you have fun?" she asked, catching her breath. "Hell yeah," I chuckled, "but I'm not sure I can keep up this pace regular like, I'm wiped out, and my back's mush." She cracked up, and I rubbed her back while she returned the favor. "We must have lounged there an hour when she piped up, am I screwing up your day?" "Nah," I said, "plans kinda flipped upside down after last night. How about a movie tonight?" Her face lit up like a kid on Christmas. "Or better yet, come over for dinner, we can watch something on my giant TV, she shot back. "Sounds like a win," I laughed. "What time?" 6:30 work. "You can chop some veggies, I suck at roasting stuff." After she took off, I sat there, staring at the wall, muttering, "What in the hell am I doing? She's your freaking mother-in-law, man. If Sophie catches wind of this, it's gonna hit the fan. Plus, she might be falling hard, do you really want to break her heart? She's the best woman you've ever known." Her love comment from earlier slammed back into me. I dropped my face into my hands, groaning, "Oh crap," while my brain spun out, especially since she kept popping up in my dreams. For the next half hour, my thoughts were a total train wreck, but I finally decided to just roll with it for the weekend and sort the mess later. That call chilled me out, and man, it turned into one killer weekend. Saturday night, we had a ball cooking dinner together, watched half a flick, then got cozy on her office couch for some private time. After that, we went to bed. On Sunday morning, we went to her fitness club for a workout, then went to the woods nearby, sweaty. We gave love to each other right under the trees and again in the back seat of my car, no matter what. On Sunday night, we still had enough juice for another round in the bedroom. On Monday morning, I was feeling as calm as I had ever been, until Laura broke that calm after breakfast by saying, "Mike, can we talk before you go to work? Just hear me out, no questions until I'm done, okay? This is hard and I need to get it off my chest." I smiled, squeezed her hands and said, "Go ahead." She took a deep breath and unloaded a 20-minute speech, barely stopping for air, nervous as hell but clear as day. She kicked off with, "I've been in love with you since the first time we met, you're the only guy I've ever truly fallen for." Then she laid out why we couldn't last long-term, her being 13 years older, the fallout with Sophie, her not being able to have kids I might want, and knowing I might never feel the same. Still, she wrapped it up with, "I'll take whatever you've got to give, I'm always gonna be here for you." I sat there, stunned silent. When she finished, she said, "Go to work, sorry for eating up your morning." I kissed her deep, locked onto those hypnotic eyes, and said, "I've got a ton to chew on. Don't freak out if I need a couple weeks apart, I'm usually quick with decisions, but this weekend's got my head all jumbled." She smiled, pecked my lips, and shooed me out with a playful shove. My mind was a freaking circus after that. For 2 weeks, unless I was buried in work or distracted, I kept circling back to Laura, Sophie, the proximity, the panic. Didn't help that almost every night, I dreamed of her, making love, jetting off to far-flung spots, snuggling up, even one wild dream where we had a dozen kids. I called her daily, just short chats, she never pushed, kept it light, except once mentioning Sophie asked if she was dating, "Cause, you look happier than ever, Mom." Laura just clammed up. 3 weeks later, I asked her over for dinner that Saturday, she jumped at it. I didn't have a game plan, just wanted to see how we clicked outside the bedroom, ended up crashing at her place, making love twice. I knew I was falling for her, but that age gap and her still being my mother-in-law. My usual snap decisions wouldn't come. We made it through the divorce finalizing, though. After, Laura took Sophie on a week-long cruise, came back saying it did Sophie good, cooled her anger toward me big time, and she seemed to get that she'd screwed up. Did she grill you about your love life? I asked. After a long beat, Laura said, yeah. So, what did you tell her? I pressed. Another pause stretched out. She finally said she told Sophie she was happy but wasn't sure it'd last long term and had no plans to bring me into the picture anytime soon. I reckon my wishy-washy nature could have stretched on for months, maybe even years, if something huge hadn't shaken me out of it. I'd finally admitted to myself that I was head over heels for Laura. We were hanging out at least 3 nights a week and yakking on the phone every single day. Even though I'd been hitched to Sophie for over 5 years, if I was real with myself, what I had with Laura was a whole lot better. Sure, that first night with Laura, she didn't know much about the bedroom, but now. Man, she's not just seasoned, she's passionate, full of love, up for anything, and bursting with energy. The story could have ended there, but you can't even imagine what was to come. The big shock came when Laura rang me up at the office one Friday afternoon, way earlier than usual. We had tickets for a play that night, plus plans for some quality alone time afterward, if you catch my drift. Her voice was shaky, tears spilling out, and she pleaded with me to hightail it to her place ASAP. I rolled up a little past 4 p.m., and when she flung the door open, her red, puffy eyes told me she'd been bawling. She dove right into my arms. I held her tight, letting her sob into my shoulder for a bit before scooping her up and settling her on the living room couch. All right, spill it, what's going on? I asked, gripping her hands gently. I didn't mean for this to happen, she choked out between sobs. I never thought it could. Don't hate me, please, you can walk away if you want. I was stumped, no clue what she was getting at. I finally got her to settle down, squeezed her hands a little tighter, locked eyes with her, and said, whoa, hold up. Tell me what's eating you, I'm totally in the dark here. She sniffled, sucked in a big breath, and dropped the bombshell, I'm 7 weeks pregnant. Talk about a curveball I didn't see coming. We'd chewed over this before, she'd always felt bad, thinking she couldn't have kids, especially since I'd made it clear I wanted them. She'd tried with her ex, James, but it never panned out. Way back after having Sophie, some doc, whose words she couldn't quite recall, told her she'd likely never conceive again. Her news hit me like a ton of bricks, and for a second, I couldn't even speak, my eyes probably bugged out like a cartoon character. Laura took my silence the wrong way, thinking I was mad or done with her, and she started crying so hard I worried she'd make herself sick. Then it hit me, I loved her deeper than anyone ever, and I wanted this kid, age gap be damned. It was decision time, and I knew my answer. I cradled her face, wiped her tears with my thumbs, and said, quit crying, Laura. I've got a question. I must have said it a dozen times before she stopped. Will you make me the happiest guy alive and marry me? I asked. Took her a minute, and me asking twice more, but she got it, grinned big, and said, yes. Her tears dried up, and we hugged like we'd never let go. I spilled my guts to Laura, telling her just how deep my love for her ran, and she hit me back with how she'd been the happiest gal alive these past 6 months, happier now than ever. Then, out of nowhere, the front door creaked open. Mom, you around? Sophie's voice bounced through the house like a shout in a canyon. We locked up like deer in headlights, spinning around to catch Sophie strolling into the living room. Her face flipped from puzzle to pure shock the second she clocked us. She beat me to the punch, blurting out, Mike, what the hell are you doing here? I stood there, tongue-tied, while Laura jumped in with something I'm damn sure she didn't mean to drop right then. I'm 7 weeks pregnant with Mike's kid, and we're tying the knot, she said. Sophie's lips twitched into a faint grin at first, like she thought we were pulling her leg, but when she caught the dead serious look on my face and the way I was holding Laura close, that smile melted away, and her eyes got all glassy. I bolted over and grabbed her just before she hit the floor, hauling her over to the couch Laura had just been parked on. Laura didn't miss a beat, she hustled off, grabbed some smelling salts and a cold washcloth, but before she used them, she turned to me with a look and said, I reckon you should clear out before she comes to. Then, with a hopeful little grin, she tossed in, "Wanna hit the jewelry stores tomorrow?" "You bet," I shot back, planting a long, deep kiss on her. "I'll pawn off my tickets for tonight's show to a buddy, just give me a ring tomorrow and tell me when to swing by." We locked lips again before I headed out. I handed those tickets over to a friend and his wife, they were over the moon about it, and I even threw in an offer to watch their Rugrats as a bonus. Thing is, Saturday didn't pan out for ring shopping. Laura buzzed me around noon, letting me know Sophie was crashing at her place for the night, and they'd probably need the whole weekend to hash things out. I couldn't argue with that. "Love you," I told her. "We'll shop soon as we can, Monday, fingers crossed." She let out a little laugh before hanging up. "Yeah, Monday'd be nice." I didn't get the full scoop on what went down between her and Sophie, but I knew Laura's love for her daughter ran as deep as it gets, despite Sophie's old screw-ups with that jerk Ryan. Those two had been thick as thieves for years before I showed up. Laura swore to me she'd laid it all out for Sophie, how she felt about me, how she'd never so much as flirted with me until she was damn sure my marriage to Sophie was dead and buried. She got how messy this was for Sophie, but she needed her daughter in her life just as bad as ever. Sophie, though. Gotta hand it to her, she took it like a champ. Even with her own heart aching, she was genuinely stoked for her mom, knowing Laura had never tasted real love before. She was even jazzed about getting a little sibling out of the deal. Me and Sophie weren't planning to stay tight, but I made it clear I didn't hold any grudges. "I'll always treat you right," I told her. Never meant to cut you deep, I just couldn't stop myself from falling for Laura. One little hiccup we ran into, if you can even call it that, was Laura's wild side kicking into overdrive during the pregnancy. She'd crack jokes about needing to make up for 20 years of lousy sex, and hell, who was I to say no? We kept things hot and heavy right up until she was 8 months and a week along, then took a breather until 2 months after our gorgeous girl Olivia came into the world. Laura and I sealed the deal with a no-fuss wedding 2 months before Olivia popped out. We kept Sophie in the loop, showed her all the respect in the world. She even stood up as a bridesmaid. I'd let go of all the bad blood with her, but Ryan, her old fling. That was a different story. Laura said Sophie hadn't touched him since our divorce kicked off, and I believed her. Still, I dug into Ryan, tracked him online, hired a PI to tail him for a few days. When I found out he was getting hitched, I mailed his fiancée a fat packet spilling every detail of how he'd wrecked my marriage with Sophie. Felt good knowing she dumped his sorry ass within a week, and he hightailed it out of town not long after. Once Olivia was here, Laura and I got to talking about growing the family. Another pregnancy wasn't in the cards for her, so we went the egg retrieval route. With some cash help from a buddy named James, we fertilized one of Laura's eggs with my swimmers and lined up a surrogate. 15 months after Olivia, that surrogate brought our boy Mike into the world. Now, those two, Olivia and Mike, are 5 and 6, and my love for Laura just keeps burning brighter. Never thought a relationship could fill me up like this, or that we'd keep the spark so alive in the bedroom. Oh, and one more thing, Sophie's hitched now, to a guy Laura and I both think is solid. She's got a baby girl on the way next month. I've mulled over what kind of bond her kid'll have with ours, but I've quit trying to puzzle it out. All I know is Laura's gonna shower that granddaughter with the same endless love she gives our kids. That woman's heart. It's got no bottom.